Alright, so we're going to keep going with this. Some practical examples of styling things in CSS. Real quick before we start, and I'm going to recreate this standard paragraph. I was just thinking a second ago that I really need to say this at the beginning and make it clear. You know, I got a comment, and I get this comment a lot that people say, oh, I don't know very much about designing, and I'm not really a very good designer, and I'm not really a very good artist. I just want to remind you guys that CSS and front-end web development has absolutely nothing to do with being a designer or an artist, for the most part. These are tools that people that are designers can certainly learn. Designers and artists that become more technical certainly wind up developing in this area, but it doesn't work the other way. I mean, you can be a front-end developer, and I mean, take me for example. I can barely even draw a straight line, so it has nothing to do with artistic ability or making things look good. 9 times out of 10, there's somebody else at the company that helps you with the way things are supposed to look. So knowing how to, if somebody gives you a mock-up or a look and feel or some assets for how a page should look, your purpose in being a front-end developer is to be able to take those and make the website look exactly like the person wanted to. So if you don't have the creative, know-how or vision to come up with the actual look and feel, you shouldn't feel bad, because that's not really part of the gig. It's not necessarily part of the skill set you need to have. I would say 90% of front-end web development has nothing to do with being a designer. So it's just my opinion. So the reason I'm saying that is because everything that I'm going to be showing you here is me putting terrible looking styles on this website. I mean, it's not going to look good when I'm done with it, because I don't have a designer here to make it look good. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So first we're going to talk about, let's see, I'll put some dimensions on this. So back to Google Chrome, if I do the inspect element, if I select this paragraph here, you'll notice it goes, by default, it's kind of going all the way across the screen. Well, I don't want that. I want it to be, thinner. So I'm going to say, I want to create basically this style for a standard type of paragraph. I'm going to say the width, I'm going to go ahead and say like 575 pixels. Now I could do something like 100% or 50%, but usually I like to do pixels. I don't know. This is more of a style thing, but oops. So I actually have to apply the standard paragraph to some class here. So we're going to start in a few minutes getting into what they call block elements. So I might as well go ahead and start showing you that right now. I'm going to change this P into a div. Now a div is a block element and not a text element. What that means is the div exists for more for layout reasons than anything else. So it says everything inside of the div, I'm going to probably position it somehow. Maybe I'll put it to the left, maybe I'll put it to the right, I'll give it some margins, some padding, I'll tell it where to go. So div just kind of implies that, it stands for divider, obviously, and it just implies that I'm going to be doing some layout work with it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that class on there. And honestly, I really don't even use paragraphs. I just kind of started with that to show you that they exist. I use divs for almost everything, and I think you'll find that most people do. So a div is kind of just like one standalone node on the client side. So let's see what happens now if I refresh this. So you'll notice that now I really do have a 575 pixel width div here. I'll prove that by clicking on it. And now you see it looks different. The left side is blue, the blue side is 575 pixels wide. You can see that over here on the right where it defines the width. And you can even click that little arrow to toggle it off and on. See? Off, on, off, on. It's pretty cool. And you can see the dimensions in that little graphic in the bottom right updating. 989 by 40, 575 by 60. So Google Chrome is awesome for messing around with this and debugging the front end. So in addition to that, I'm going to go ahead and leave that like that for now. I'll keep going here. And I'm going to go ahead and update like every one of my paragraphs over here to be divs, because I really don't want any paragraphs. Don't like paragraphs. And I'm going to make these all, use the standard paragraph class for now. That one, that one, that one, Leave all that alone. That one's fine. That one too. So now, perfect, that's exactly what I wanted. So now you can see all of my previous paragraphs that are now divs with the standard paragraph style are all smashed up into these little boxes. And I can see the boxes actually if I come back here and hover over them. There's one paragraph, there's another. The reason this is exactly what I wanted is because you can see now that there's no really automatic space in between these two paragraphs. That's good. I don't like things happening automatically for me. I want to specify it specifically. So I'm also going to say, well, you know what? I want some, some top margin and some bottom margin on every standard paragraph. So this particular, oops, what am I doing? This particular attribute is called margin top. And there's also a margin bottom. And now that I don't really have any paragraphs on the screen anymore, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And while I'm at it, why don't I change the font to Calibri. So, now I change the font size too. Font size be 14 pixels, 15 pixels. See how that looks. It's a little small, go 16 pixels. Okay, so it's looking better. Now you can see I actually have some margins above and below my text. I think I want my margins even a little bigger than that, so I'm going to go ahead and say 2020. Alright, that's looking good. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about block elements because that's pretty important to talk about before we get into almost all the rest of this stuff. So block elements are what you use mostly to position things and lay things out on the screen. So just going to get into that. So I think I'm going to start with this table here. So I'm going to get rid of this table. I hardly ever use tables. You don't really need to use tables ever. So I'm going to show you how to accomplish a look and feel of a table just by using some layout techniques using block elements in CSS. So this is going to be really, really useful for you, especially if you're going to be creating like responsive design pages in the future. So I think you'll get the point in about 2 seconds here. So let's see, to get rid of the table, I'm going to leave the table there just so that we can compare it, and I'm going to reconstruct it without using a table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one div, and I'm going to pretend that I have a class called, let's see, what is this thing? It's kind of my resume. Oh, it's projects, the projects that I've worked on. Remember, we always want to use classes that have a name of what the thing is conceptually, because then that name will never really change, even if the styles inside change. So inside of my projects, I have basically 3 projects that I've listed. So I can say div class equals project, and I can have 3 of those. Bang, bang, bang. And inside of each project, I have 2 things. I have basically a title, or a name and a description. I'll say a name and a description. So inside of the project, I have, we'll say project name. Actually, we'll just call it name. And class equals description. I'll just say desk so it looks all nice. And I'll go ahead and end the div right there. And then I'll paste that in each project. So this is going to be basically what I have. This is going to be my replacement for the table. I have my projects node, and I have 3 projects, and then within each project I have a name and a desk. And let me just kind of migrate my content over there. So inner quoting, name your price, native mobile apps, and let's go ahead and migrate these 3 over there. That guy, and that guy. Alright, so if I do absolutely nothing here, this is going to be a giant mess on the screen, but I want to show you that. So let's go back over here and refresh. So naturally I have a bunch of divs here, and look what it says: internet quoting, HTML and Flash application, blah blah blah. So if we inspect the element here and we see what's going on, there's internet quoting, there's name your price, and there's native mobile app. So it kind of looks like 3 projects, but they're all stacked on top of each other and they're all weird. And if I highlight project, well, that looks okay, I guess. And if I highlight projects, that looks okay, but not really. So the problem is projects is looking okay because it's, as you can see, the blue area that is projects is wrapping everything. That's good. But project, I don't want projects to be stacked on top of each other like that. I want them to be on the same line. So I want internet quoting and HTML and Flash applications to not have a line break in between them. So basically I want them to be kind of form a row of content. So the way you do this is by using the display attribute in HTML. So if I look at this and I say, what am I trying to change here? I'm trying to change basically these 2 things. I'm trying to change name and desk, and I don't want them to be on top of each other. I want them to be one after the other. So if I go into my styles and I say anything called .name I want to change, and anything called .desk I want to change, you basically use display inline block. Now the default style is block, which means stacked on top of each other. But inline block makes them one right after the other. So I'm a little bit closer to having this table look and feel right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is just try to get a simple border around the whole project's div to make it start looking like a table. Now that node already has the project's name. You can see the class name is already projects. So even if I go into my styles, I don't have a projects class yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that, and I'm going to throw a simple style in there, border 1 pick solid black. And that should throw a simple border around there. I think this is probably a pretty good time to note that you can start to see that a lot of these attributes have different data types. Like, this one's a string that says Cambria. This one's 16 pixels. This one is inline block. This one is 1 pick solid black. They all seem to have these different data types, these different possible list of valid values. And again, I'll just remind you to utilize Chrome or Visual Studio, as they give you pretty good IntelliSense on what types of valid values that you can put into all the different attributes in CSS. If all else fails, you can Google. Stack Overflow usually has really great examples. W3 Schools has an exhaustive list of all the properties, attributes, and different types of values. But don't feel overwhelmed. You can never learn them all. You certainly can't even learn most of them in one class. So there's millions of different permutations of attributes and valid values. So it just kind of takes practice and repetition. I think I'm going to use this opportunity right now to work in an example of a combination. So instead of saying the name class should be an inline block and the desk class should be an inline block, well, why don't I just say I want both of them to be an inline block? You can totally do that by just comma delimiting the things that you want to apply that to. Be careful that if you actually want to do that, you actually put a comma there. If you don't, it means something completely different. So that didn't change anything. So now we're at kind of a better point. Let's see. I think I want to, well, let's take a look at this. Our left divs here they're all messed up as far as the width and how far the next piece of text on those lines are starting. So I want to give all of these names. And again, we'll just show you. If I click on this one here, you can see that's a name, right? And inside of this project, that's the second name. And inside of this project, that's the third name. So we want to use a selector for the name class. That's what we care about. And we already have that. But see, it's a good thing that we just went over that example, because I can't change it in here because that'll change both the name and the desk. I want to change only the name, so I need a new selector here, and this says anything that I write in here is only going to select the elements that have name, not desk. So in here I want to do something like width 140 pixels, and over here now you'll notice that there's extra space on the right. No matter how small the text is, the width of the name is always 140 pixels. And you can come over here, if you don't like it, you can come over here and play around with this. You can scroll up, and scroll down, change the width. Like I said, this is a good place to kind of see what the different valid values are for the thing that you want. But I think 140 looked good, so we're going to go ahead and go with that for now. Let's see, what do I want to do next? How about a line on the right side of the column so that we kind of have that table look, like I said. So we'll say only names will have a border right, 1 pic solid black. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so getting better and better. So, and another thing is I think I want to indent my table a little bit and also give it some bottom margin. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to say margin left 20 pics and margin bottom 20 pics. There, now that's starting to look real nice. Okay, so this is pretty close to how I want it to look. So actually this is almost done. There's one little property. I kind of want to shrink wrap this border around it so that it's not all sprawling off to the right side. And instead of putting a width on it, which what I would do with a normal div, I'm actually going to go ahead and say display table on projects. So this is not turning the node into a table. This is just marking the outer parent node and saying, you know, I want you to look like a table. So by doing that, we kind of get this shrink wrap feel to it. Go ahead and close the DOM there. So at this point, I think I can go ahead and delete the table underneath it. It looks pretty bad anyway. So you can see this, once you have these divs in place, you can move things around and style them without changing the HTML anymore. From this point on, it's all about changing the CSS, and that is exactly the situation you want to be in. You don't want to be changing the way things look in HTML, so that's why tables are bad, usually. So here we are, got rid of the table. Let's see if we can do a couple more cool things here. The headers look pretty bad. Let's take care of those. So I want to get rid of all this extra space around these headers. It's like automatically putting a margin under the headers. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it I don't want any margins on the headers whatsoever. The way to do that would be to say, you know what, H1, oops, H1, H2, H3, all of you, I don't want to have any margin at all. 0. So that tightened up the headers. And, you know, let's say I want greetings and my name is Donald Santos on the same line. So I want this and this to be inline block instead of block. So again, using the kind of the DOM to use layouts. So then I could say, well, just H1 and H2, I want you to be display inline block. Alright, so that's kind of more of the look and feel that I was going for. Let me italicize my bullet points here. So instead of wrapping the li elements in a u tag, which, you know, they would do back in the old days, we can just go ahead and say, I usually put the element selectors at the top and the style selectors at the bottom. So move this H1 to the top. Style selector, style selector. Okay, so I want to say LIs are in italics, and this would be, I think it's text style, no, font style, italic. Yep, there we go. So those look kind of nice. Alright, I think I'm going to stop this one here, because in the last one we're going to get into a couple of cool things like gradient backgrounds and talking about some techniques for how to organize your classes. So we'll finish off with that in the next video. So again, I'll see you in a couple seconds.